Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Happy Monday and happy Halloween, and welcome to this 11th episode of the Invisible Museum Tour. My name is Jeff Olson. I'm the Art Education Director for Royal Talens North America, and I will be your fellow traveler on today's journey. Our show is sponsored by Royal Talens North America, Blick Art Materials, and the Z Academy. We would like to thank them all for the support for this wonderful art educational programming. Now let me introduce our host. Her work is featured in numerous prominent private and public collections around the world, and she is the recipient of many awards, including the Alex Award in Visual Arts. She's an art historian and educator working for over a decade at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. She's the co-founder of the nonprofit Project AWE, on a mission dedicated to exploring connections between Western esotericism and the arts. She is also the founder of the Z Academy, where she mentors students of all ages. Please, everybody, join me in welcoming the incomparable Zhenya Gershman. Zhenya, how's it going?
It's going great. I just want to tell everybody how excited we're to be back, to see you. We've already planned the next tours for the remainder of 2022. I'm 10 years off.
Oh, take us back. Not yet.
And I just want to thank that this is truly possible, a free program, educational program, because of Royal Talens North America and now Blick. I'm so proud that the two of them are sponsoring this. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, since it's our, I can't believe, 11th tour together, we started dressing the same with Jeff without even checking. So you could see we have the same shirt. We're vibing late Renaissance for you.
That's right. So, I'm going full Baroque. Full Baroque.
All right, I'm going to share my PowerPoint really quickly. So let's get that going. Here we are. And you are here for, of course, the Invisible Museum tours. And today, I love to do something different every time. So today, you really are a witness to magic, a witness to transformation, to mysteries. You are going to be not just witnessing, you are going to be actively decoding and partaking in alchemical and Kabbalistic exercises. So I hope you're up for it. It's 10 a.m. in Los Angeles. It may be 12 or 1 p.m. or in Europe, it might be evening. I hope you're ready for this journey. So we begin with the idea of talking paintings. This is how we advertised this segment, and I really wanted to show you that this tradition exists from early medieval times in Western European art. And here we have a panel from Madrid, from a beautiful museum, Tisha I can't pronounce it. Jeff?
Yeah, your guess is pretty.
All right, somebody in the audience help us. Titian Museum. And we have an annunciation of sorts, and we have an angel delivering the message to actually Mary's mother, that she will be pregnant with Mary, with the Holy Virgin. And in order to say that, there is actually a scroll exiting. He's opening his mouth, and the scroll is exiting his mouth, and he's speaking. This is like a modern comic strip, right? So it's a talking balloon, and a traditional term for this is a banderole, because it looks like a scroll that's unwrapping. And so this was a very direct way to let the viewer know that this is a talking painting. It's time to listen in. Most of the time, these type of talking paintings were reserved for religious imagery, so it is not surprising that the text would be in Latin. So my daughter, who took Latin, helped me decipher it. Ego sum angelus domini atemisus. I am the angel of the Lord sent to you. So sent to you to give a message from God. A beautiful detail.
That's interesting, Zhenya, the whole topic of hidden messages, even though it's right there, we're talking about a mostly lay congregation, right, that was illiterate. So even this was kind of directed towards a select group of viewers, right?
It's very interesting. You know how we are really going to talk about the confluence of text and image, right? And how you can even take in text as an image. And we've moved away from text towards emoji, basically images. And if you showed emoji to a medieval viewer, they'll probably just not understand what in the world we're trying to say. But we add like 7 of them, and all of a sudden you know exactly how the person is feeling. So there is this idea of text as being as a symbol, which is the medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque viewer are going to be really great at reading, right? So it's very, very interesting metaphor and indeed an exercise. So here we have, even though we're talking about a lot about Rembrandt today, of course, we always go back to Vincent, who adored Rembrandt. I can't think of Rembrandt without Vincent. And he has many amazing quotes on Rembrandt. And he said, Rembrandt is so deeply mysterious. And that's what the stress of today's tour is, the mysteries today, that he says things for which there are no words in any language. And I pause here for just a moment because we are indeed going to be studying words in Rembrandt's art. But in order for us to warm up, I want to show you how there are deeper mysteries that for which there are no words, and yet Rembrandt is able to tell us. And this is the best example, the Jewish bride. And we're going to be seeing a lot of Jewish subject matter today, about which we're going to talk about the confluence between Christianity and Judaism, a crossover between the religions to reach deeper depths of mystery. And this amazing painting, as we know, Van Gogh sat for hours in front of, and he said if I could even sit, a week in front of it with just a glass of water, he was so moved by it. And a little warm up is that it's called The Jewish Bride. And the title actually was stuck onto it by one of the historians early on, trying to attribute a title to it. And because of that, so many scholars had guessed who this couple might be. They suggested this could be somebody as Abraham and Sarah, or Isaac and Rebecca. One scholar actually said, no, it's Titus during his wedding. It's Titus himself. So regardless who this is, what we see and why these parallels of a couple, like the loving couples like this, even perhaps Rembrandt's son, is because we do see the moment of tenderness and love. If I had to think about the most tender painting in the history of art, this is the one that comes to mind. But here's my first question to Jeff and our audience. Why in the world, if they're loving each other, if this perhaps even could be a wedding moment, an embrace, why aren't they looking at each other? So if hopefully our audience can participate and type a few of their suggestions, but of course we'll start with Jeff. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, he's definitely looking at her. You can see the depth of appreciation and love that he is sharing directly through his gaze. But you're right, she's kind of looking out and forward, almost like to the future, or the I don't know, a possible picture of their life together, maybe.
And this is a really astute comment as always, and I bring us a little bit closer, and this is the hint for our viewers. You could see the placement of their hands. And I would actually probably take his gaze. It looks like it's directed towards her, but it sort of slides over her. It's, I think, like her, he's also perhaps suggested to be looking ahead towards her in the future, their future together. And with the hands, we could see that one is placed on the heart, and she's reciprocating that gesture, and the other hand is placed on her stomach. So do we have any comments from our audience?
Let's see, we've got a few of them coming through. Maybe there's a fear or apprehension of the future in this.
Very interesting. So many sentiments that could come. Uncertainty, right? Could be one of them. Well, I'm going to give, if there's more comments, let me know, Jeff.
And looks troubled. I think people are kind of queuing in on that. I guess if you know Rembrandt's history and his family, and especially with his many children, you could probably attribute that anxiety in the picture towards his real life experience, right?
So I will, we're starting to talk about children. So this future of the generation is very interesting. And I will answer my own question with a little biographical note. When I was in Russia, I saw this painting in Moscow. I was born in Moscow, in the Tretьяков Gallery. And this is by Marc Chagall. And I was about maybe 9 years old when my parents took me to see this. And I was so moved by this image, specifically because you see this Jewish wedding and you see the angel, like we saw in Annunciation imagery, right? Pronouncing the future, pronouncing the pregnancy. And here on the bride's cheek, a drawing, a tattoo of her future, her unborn child. And it's really interesting because we could see that it's almost certain that Chagall would have looked at the Jewish bride, and the composition is almost identical. So he is responding, he's almost giving us an answer of what is this that they're doing. The husband placing the hand on the heart below the heart. Right? So there's the beating of the second heart, the unwritten, something you can't put into the words, the future of this child, the future of this family, and then she's placing also the hand on her stomach. So a beautiful, going back to Van Gogh's quote, for Rembrandt is able to show us something invisible, something mysterious, for which there's no words almost. It's hard to put it into words. And I wanted to transition to the fact that indeed Rembrandt and his circle, particularly his students, were extremely interested in the mystery, in the perfectly for us in the invisible and the unspoken, and yet tied to language and to a talismanic quality of the language, which we will explore in a moment. This is a painting by Rembrandt's most talented and gifted and amazing student, Gerrit Dou, and it hangs here locally in Los Angeles in the Getty Museum. I hope that you'll come visit me and we can go see it together. I know Jeff and I had seen it together. And Dou it's a tiny little image. You could see it's 12 by 8 inches, really minuscule details. And in this image, as we close in, we find a magician or astronomer or alchemist or a Kabbalist who is deep in his work. He is measuring the planets, the alignment of the astroglobe, planets on the astroglobe, and checking. He's actually sitting, if we go back, he's sitting at the window opening. He's looking at the stars in the middle of the night. And one of my favorite details is the bottle with the liquid. It's painted so exquisitely. It's smaller than what I could show you with my hand. And it has a color liquid that's projecting through the color shadow onto the table. And what he's doing, why it's there, he's charging this liquid in the moonlight. This is alchemy at its deepest moment. And so I just wanted to attract your attention that the subject of science and alchemy and magic is very much at heart on the mind of Rembrandt's circle. And even more so, I mentioned the word Kabbalah. Here we see the portrait of an old Jew, a Jewish man. And what is Kabbalah? Kabbalah is a Jewish mystical tradition. Kabbalah literally means passing on the tradition, and the tradition of mysteries that are coming from generation to the generation. And Rembrandt, interestingly, was a Protestant artist who painted, he was a Christian, who painted more Jewish subject than any other artist through art history. And he also lived in the neighborhood that was called Briestrat. And Briestrat, you can visit today, was a place where a lot of artists lived alongside with the recently immigrated Jews, specifically Portuguese and Spanish Jews. Netherlands was extremely receptive to the Jewish population and allowed them to practice their religion and to publish manuscripts. And Rembrandt is living around some of the greatest Jewish scholars of the time. Next door is, for instance, Spinoza, a great scholar, a great philosopher. And another amazing visitor, another amazing neighbor is Manasseh ben Israel. And here's a portrait of Manasseh by Rembrandt. This rabbi was really progressive, and he is responsible for founding the first Jewish press, printing Jewish literature in Amsterdam. And so interesting that not only he was a neighbor of Rembrandt, we're going to talk about also how he commissioned Rembrandt and inspired him. But I wanted to tie this idea between Judaism and Christianity. And here's a scholar. This is a Christian scholar, a mystic, a great mystic, Abraham von Frankenberg. And he really championed that in order to understand Christianity, one must study Hebrew philosophy, ideas, and even the language. His quote was, "Outstanding, worthy, and deepest secrets are up to today preserved by the Jews." And he specifically said, if you want to understand these secrets, you have to study the text of Manasseh ben Israel, Manasseh, who is the neighbor of Rembrandt. So here we have on the right a Christian scholar, on the left a Jewish scholar, and Manasseh commissioned prints from Rembrandt for his great mystical publication. Here we see one of the 4 etchings for Daniel's visions. Daniel was considered a prophetic character. He comes from the book of Daniel. And he had apocalyptic visions. And in his apocalyptic visions, they are supposed to be of great meaning for the rest of the world, not just the Jewish population, but everyone, foretelling the future. Here we see one example of Rembrandt showing you the beasts appearing. We could see a parallel in St. John's visions, apocalyptic vision. There seems to be a great crossover in this imagery. And Ben Israel is responsible for inspiring and whispering the ideas and the concepts and execution to Rembrandt on 2 of his most mysterious images. And that's what we're going to study today. The first one is a colossal painting. This is 66 by 82 inches in National Gallery, London. Have you been to this museum, Jeff?
Yes, it's a wonderful museum.
It's a wonderful museum, and this is an amazing star in their collection. It's Belhazar's Feast, and the subject of this painting is actually a mystery, a revelation that's happening right in front of our eyes. We could say a prophecy, an ancient prophecy that is appearing right in front of us. What's happening if we look a little bit closer? Belhazar is having a great feast, and he's using the vessels that were stolen from the Jewish temple that were used for religious purposes for entertaining of his guests. And because of this desecration, there is a warning that appears in front of him, in front of his wall. This warning is known as this became part of an expression in our common language. You probably heard this expression, the writing on the wall. So this writing on the wall appears, and it seems quite disturbing, and it stays there. And the king calls in all of this, all of his greatest advisors, all of his philosophers, all of his mystics, and nobody's able to explain what it says. It seems like gibberish. And at that point, he then calls in Daniel, who we just mentioned a little bit earlier. Daniel, the name Daniel literally means judged by God. So he calls in this young man, this young Jewish man who happens to be at the Babylonian court because he was brought at some point to it. He was stolen and brought to Babylonia. And Daniel looks and interprets this message. But the first thing I wanted to ask our viewers, and Jeff, of course, here is the feast. Here's the close-up of the painting. We see the writing on the wall. We see the vessels. We see the guests. We see the king standing up in awe and fear. Where is Daniel? Can you find him?
Oh, man.
And this is, of course, a question for our viewers. Can you find Daniel? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, he can't be the one writing, right? That's
can't be. That's God's hands, right?
Yeah, that's God's hands. Looks like Rembrandt's wife. I don't know. There's a figure that's kind of in shadow back there, maybe.
Right?
I'm
But
not
then he
sure.
would be what I
Yeah,
love
there must
about
be a
Jeff.
symbol for him somewhere in here. Maybe this lion head or.
Jeff, what I love about you is that you never fall into my traps and you never answer if you don't know. I love that you say, I don't know, this stumbles me. And that's sometimes a very profound answer in itself. Daniel is not here. It
Yay.
was definitely a trick question. And that's what I want to do with our viewers is train ourselves not to fall into reading the story linearly, but to think in this magical presence because it's very important. We are the Daniel. We are coming to see, we are called into this table. We are the one who are looking at the magic writing on the wall, and we are asked by Rembrandt to interpret it like Daniel was asked to interpret it. So I want us to be on the lookout. We're in this magical position, right? We're in a powerful position. Jeff, A+ to you as always. So besides the writing on the wall, of course, the vessels themselves are main characters here. And I just love what Rembrandt does in the composition. Notice how he, instead of turning the vessel sideways, he turned the vessel with its opening towards us. And if you look closely, can you see what's happening, Jeff, with the vessel?
Well, it looks like something's pouring out of it.
Correct. So it's regurgitating, it's throwing up, it's rejecting the party liquid. This is Rembrandt interpreting. This is not in any text, right? He's saying this is unholy, like spewing out. And another thing that's so brilliant, because we are not just doing a history tour, we're doing art history and art appreciation. Look at how he positioned the woman's body itself as a vessel with her neck pointed towards us, the same perspective as the neck of the vessel, right? If you were to imagine her head coming off, it would open up with the throat. He's kind of emphasis on the throat and the thrusting forward. Really amazing dramatic composition. Here's another vessel that's being turned over. It too is spewing out the liquid. It's really obvious in this close-up. But of course,
Zhenya, I've got to do a shout out here to Robin. She was correct in your question. She says Daniel is looking from our perspective. So kudos to her.
Robin, thank you. I am not surprised. If it's the Robin I'm thinking it is, I'm not surprised. She's one of the most brilliant women I know. Here, the chalice is being turned over, and of course, we're going towards the writing on the wall. So it is written in Aramaic, and Aramaic is very close to Hebrew. Those of you who read Hebrew would be able to recognize the letters and even sound it out. But we cannot make any sense out of it. Hebrews or Aramaic is equally read from right to left, right? So for Latin readings, we would say it backwards, or Latin is backwards to Hebrew. It depends which side you are looking from. But when you try to read this text, it means nothing. And that would be the intent of Rembrandt, so that like Belhazar, like all his scholars, you would say, I recognize the letters, but my God, don't I wish I knew what it meant. Until we realize that it is specifically coded in 5 columns and meant to be read vertically. So all the words are vertically. And what they are, many, many. So the first 3 letters is just the, you could read M and Aleph, mene, tekel, Ufrasin. And Ufrasin, Ufarsin is spelled out in 3 letters, so 2 columns. And how Daniel, when he reads this out and spells this out, how he interprets this, it says, many is numbered, and this means that your days to the king, this is a warning that your days at the court as a king are numbered. And he emphasizes it twice. Your days are numbered. You have been weighed. This comes from the Egyptian tradition, right? That carries over to many religions, that the scale of justice, right? You have been weighed. And if you are too light, that means that your deed have not been good. You've come up light on the scale. You have been judged and you've been too light in your deeds, not correct, not just. And Ufarsin, your kingdom will be divided. It will no longer belong to you, and your enemy will take over. So You could see that this is a very menacing message. Now, this precise configuration of letters is found in Minasse's publication. So Minasse is the one who's teaching Rembrandt how to interpret this painting, how to show it, and even a lot of the Jewish people would not be able to understand it at the time. This would be a really high, mystical, learned individual that would take understanding of this. And it took centuries to even, there's so much writing about it, there was so much misunderstanding. So you are receiving this message right now. Kabbalah means receive. You're receiving this from Rembrandt directly the way it was intended. Now, this is extremely interesting. Jeff noticed God's hand. This is in a tradition of the Jewish tradition that you cannot show the face of God. If we step back for just a second, we could see that God is represented. Basically, his voice is represented. The letters represent we are hearing God. And it's also, if we go step back, it's the source of illumination, right? All of the light is coming from that message, right? So this is extremely interesting. But God's hand, it's in the act of writing. And Rembrandt was criticized by the scholars that said that he confused Nun with Zion, and that it shows that he didn't really know Hebrew. So the last word, as you remember, is Ufrasin, ending with an N, and that would be the letter Nun in Hebrew. But when we look at God's hand, the very last letter looks like Zion, right? So it looks like a shorter N, or Zion. And they said, you see, Rembrandt didn't really know what he was doing. But when the painting was x-rayed, Nun in the longer letter was written, and God's hand was removed, just kind of aside to it. So Rembrandt painted it correctly, and then later changed his mind and painted God in the act of writing the writing on the wall. So this is Nun incomplete. He is about to complete the long letter. So what that means, going back to Robin's observation, that we are actually witnessing with Daniel and with everybody else in the court, not the painting from 1650s, but right now, right this second, if this happened in front of us, right? Isn't that amazing, Jeff?
That is. He is amazing.
Yeah, and from that, oh, sorry, that's that I meant to show you Zion. That's the shorter letter. So it was incorrectly thought that Rembrandt was writing Zion, but Nun, indeed, he's writing.
I'm fascinated by the concept of the light coming from the letters too. It kind of takes me back to the light through the flask on the table of the astronomer. This idea of light as transformation, or the word. Right, it's a consistent theme for Rembrandt, isn't it?
You nailed it. And so this idea that the writing itself is holy, that there's beyond, the letters themselves are basically the presence of divinity right in front of us. And that's what we're doing. We're going 17 years later to the second most mystical, maybe one of the most mystical artworks in the history. One can say that. It's in this case, it's an engraving. So unlike a painting, it's been reproduced so many times, and its versions are housed in every museum you can name. And this is attributed as a scholar in his study. So in this case, we could see that the scholar, as we're looking closer, is indeed engaged in a mystical activity. Perhaps he is a Kabbalist or an alchemist, and we could tell that by the way he's dressed and by the apparition that is appearing that we're going to discuss in the window, the very same thing that Jeff was referring to, the disk of light, radiating light. So if we look closer at the main character, he's actually wearing something that reminds us of a Jewish prayer shawl that is called a talit, that is thrown over his shoulders. And on his head, he's wearing what is called a sudra. This is a Middle Eastern origin of a hat that we could find in different religions, and it was prevalent in Amsterdam at the time in the Sephardic Jews, and you could see it wrapped around the head, and probably a kippah is hidden underneath a smaller hat, a garment covering his head. But most importantly, he is seeing this apparition in the window. And in this apparition in the window, there are angelic names. And this was the practice, the Kabbalistic practice, that you would pray and you would recite and you would focus yourself on the names of God, various names of angels and God. And eventually, this really hot flashes of light would appear and illuminate you, and great magic would happen. I wanted to attract your attention that this apparition is appearing in the window, and it has 3 circles, and these 3 consecutive circles have different writings. So on the inner circle, we will decipher each one in a moment. We see Inri, and this strange cross, almost like a plus sign. And then in the middle circle, we see, if we read right to left, Adam Tidagiram. And don't worry, we'll explain everything what that means. And then the third one, larger circle, Amrtet Algar Algastina. And by the time we're done with this tour, these words will become your old friends and they'll mean a lot to you. But what's really interesting, did you notice, Jeff, that there is actually a hand in the mirror, in the window?
I see that kind of opening, right?
Right, and the hand is
too, yeah.
Yeah, it's pointing. It's pointing at something extremely important. Can you make out what it's holding in the other hand and pointing to?
I can't, no.
I wonder if some of our viewers were able to tell. It is actually a mirror. So someone, an angelic being, or God himself, or God through an angel, is holding a mirror in his hand and pointing to it. And I took a little slide yesterday for fun. This is me with a mirror with my hand. And basically what this clue is, this is a key that in order to understand this talisman, in order to decipher it, one must use the mirror. It is through the mirror writing that you'll understand the depth of this image. So this kind of isn't that great? So the reversal is going to show you the truth. We have this from all kinds of folklore, of course, even in fairy tales, mirror, mirror on the wall, right? Asking the mirror for the truth. The mirror will always tell you the truth. It won't just reflect your beauty and flatter you. It will tell you who the fairest. It will tell you the depth. So an alchemical mirror or Kabbalistic mirror is the one that reflect, like it is thought that our world is just a reflection, but when you look at the reflection back into the mirror, you will see the truth that the God intended. So this idea of reversal and the truth, and we have it even in our language. If you use the word to speculate, which is take ideas and think about them, right? To really imagine what they might mean, comes from the word speculum or mirror. Right? So you're taking the reality, you reflect it, or even the idea of reflection, right? We reflect the meaning. So this is extremely important to us. Okay, so we go closer to the disc and we start with the outer circle. And we're going to go closer and closer into the heart of this talisman and try to understand it. So you will see that at the bottom, the text begins. We could read it clockwise in Latin letters. And they're meant to be shuffled. There are 3 different distinct Kabbalistic practices how to read text. One of them is it's called rotation of the alphabet. You rotate the letter. It's basically like an anagram, right? And when you shuffle the letters, you derive a new meaning. So if we shuffle these letters, you will be able to understand in Latin, tangas larga latet amor. You will touch great depths. Love is hidden. And I find it very poetic that we started with a love image, the image of the Jewish bride. And now at the heart of this cerebral image that has text and a scholar, what is at the root of it? The greatest depth of this image is, again, love. Now, this points to a Christian text by St. Paul, one of his letters to the Corinthians that he wrote out of jail. It's letter number 13. And specifically the 2nd and the 12th stanza, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge. And if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. So this is a warning within the heart of the print. Even if you're a great scholar and you know everything what it means, but you come with it without love, it will mean nothing to you, right? You will kind of say, so what? So love is at the heart of this image. Love, the greatest love. Love for humanity, love for God, love for your art, love for each other, a really deepest love. And then number 12, now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. Isn't that fun? But then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. So here is a play on who is looking. What does it mean? Just God now knows me completely. It's like we are the painting to be read. God can see us, but we can't see God, right? And through this image, if we have love, we'll be able to have glimpse of divinity. We'll be able to get glimpse beyond the reflection, the puzzling reflection in the mirror. So this is what Rembrandt is trying to tell you with the outer circle. I pause here. Questions, comments?
Well, I think people are just fascinated. Matter of fact, that word is being used. Fascinating, excellent, very interesting. So I think you've got people captured and captivated here.
All right.
I love
Everybody.
that. Oh, I love that Paul is brought into this because his transformation was through light, right?
Yes. Oh my God, that is so genius. As usual, Jeff, I get so inspired by you, and I wish I brought in the slide of my favorite painting of Rembrandt. Please look it up for everyone. This is homework. Travel to see Rembrandt's self-portrait as St. Paul. He really identified with St. Paul, and this idea of light. What happened to St. Paul? He was blinded by the light, but through this blindness, he was able to see. He was able to see deeper. So brilliant here. I should have used it. Minus to me.
Never.
All right. So we go into the second. You're ready to go to, we were in the outer circle. Let's just see what happens. Oh, no, we actually stay with the outer circle one more moment. Sorry, it is so deep that I'm trying to take you to such depth. So you see at the very top of our phrase that we were deciphering, there is the word alga, right? So if we use the mirror and read it backwards, right, it would be, read it for me, please, Jeff. Backwards, alga backwards is?
Agla.
Agla. So agla is another Kabbalistic method, an acronym, or in Kabbalistic term, we call it notarikon. And that is a practice that you take the first letter of the word and you spell out a sentence, a full meaning behind it. And for A is ata, and for G is gibor, and for L is leolam, and for A is Adonai. And this is a phrase which means, thou art mighty forever, O Lord. And it comes from the Jewish daily prayer, the most important prayer that is recited 3 times standing, called Amidah. And you have to, Amidah literally means standing, because you are in such awe of these important words that you have to stand up while reciting. And when we look at the print, the actual scholar is standing. So it shows us how deeply Rembrandt understood the culture, and is showing it to us that it is in this process of reciting these words again that the miracle is taking place. I wanted to take you towards the full sentence where it comes from Amidah, and it comes from the second blessing, actually, that is known as Guverot, which literally means a power. And when we read the entire sentence, you will see we read from right to left. So you are mighty forever, O Lord, restorer of the dead you are. So very interesting. Where comes the power? It comes from, for God, you can actually reverse time. Time is just for people. He can bring back the divinity, the power, the higher power. Death is nothing. And this, of course, in the Christian mind, would bring up the images of Christ raising the Lazarus. And this is my favorite painting at Los Angeles County Museum, here locally as well in Los Angeles. A tiny little image, 37 by 32 inches, not a huge painting, but showing Christ raising Lazarus out of the dead. This particular talisman, we find it in actually functioning Jewish coins and talismans and pieces of paper, agla, and it was used particularly for helping against fires. So this is a very interesting moment. Why would this, the rising of the dead, would actually protect you against fires? Well, for the medieval mind and for the Baroque mind, a drought was very important, and it could actually mean the end of that city if you don't have the rain, right? And we had a lot of droughts in Los Angeles, a lot of fires, dangerous fires in Los Angeles, so we can really relate. But God's seen as the one who can conquer death, and death is also shown as the cycles of nature. If the drought is death, the rain is life again. So this particular part of the anagram that we see is actually dedicated to this restore protection against natural disasters. Found that really, really interesting as well. Okay, so now we go to the middle circle. And that we find here. We are crawling towards the heart. And in the heart, we will find the deepest meaning. But in the second circle, it too can be read forwards or backwards. Again, forwards for Latin, backwards for Hebrew. You could say forwards for Hebrew, backwards for Latin. It depends what tradition you're coming from. Or the mirror image. This would be the reason, of course, that this is ciphered into the circular roundel, because this way Rembrandt can arrange the text to be read any which way, right? Very convenient. So here we see the text, Adam te dagiram. And Ade, if you just change the letters a little bit, Adam te adgiram will mean, men, I will guide you. So this is a direct address to the viewer. Okay, guys? You ready? If you have love, if you've passed my test, if you use the mirror, I will guide you. This is a promise. If we apply the mirror and read this text the other way, you will have Adam te dagiram, read right to left, Mada te marigad. And though these are Latin letters, it becomes Hebrew meaning. And what it means, Mada is knowledge, and Te Maregad, master of binding. So what is knowledge and master of binding? This doesn't just ring a bell for all of us today, but it represents the science of the day. Here we go back to Gerard Dew, and we see our alchemist. The alchemist, the basic function that you do is you take the material and you liquefy it. And here we see the liquid, and the next step of liquefaction is coagulation. So you transform one matter into another, and that's what's about to happen. So when we go back to this text, knowledge is the master of binding. It means that you are able to transgress one matter to another. Now, for Royal Talens and the Blick, this means art supplies. It really means paint. Paint is the deepest alchemy, right? We take all these materials and they turn them to oil paint, things that I use in my painting, right? The Rembrandt Paints. So here, artists at the time and alchemists shared the laboratories, shared their ideas. We still do, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. It's something that I talk about a lot when I'm teaching. as well, the artist as alchemist, and the evolution of pigments, and the close alignment between the making of the materials and the meaning of the work. It's really a fascinating
And it's so
exploration.
interesting, right? Because we're talking about magical practice, and those of you scientifically inclined might be saying, what is this superstition? But art is magical. We're taking this, little bit of dirt, turn it into yellow ochre, and make gold appear in a painting, right?
All about transformation. All about
all
transformation.
about, and we witness this. And for Rembrandt, why would Rembrandt be attracted to Kabbalah and mysticism and all of this? Because he sees this potential throughout his paintings and etchings and drawings. He sees how images can be transformative, right? Mm-hmm. So now we go to the heart of the painting, and we find the letters INRI, INRI. And INRI is a classical tradition to refer to Christ, which literally you see here spelled out, to represent Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And this was a little note that was attached to the top of a cross to mockingly identify Christ as the King of the Jews. And it became a tradition to encode and imply Christ through these 4 letters. I show you here a Rembrandt painting, and those of you who want to see it a little bit closer for homework, it's actually in the Church of St. Vincent in Amsterdam, not a museum. It would be wonderful to see it in person. I do know we always have viewers for these tours in Amsterdam, so please go visit it for us. You'll see, even from far away image, that it's written 3 times on a piece of paper above Christ on the cross, because Rembrandt was so educated that he wrote it in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, not just the Latin abbreviation. So really a brilliant, educated man. And INRI, for an alchemist, the alchemist wanted to show this transformation, that liquefaction and coagulation. How can you take this concept of Christ and look at it, how it implies even a deeper meaning? What does Christ represent? And I really thought of Christ as the 4 elements of matter, right? So if you take these letters, I in Hebrew is Yibashah, which represents land, or the element of matter. N is Nur, light or fire. R is Ruach, or spirit, representing the air. And Yim would be sea or water. So it's showing that we have a literal story of Christ, but Christ is also representing the 4 elements, the creation, everything, like the spirituality was thought of. So I found this very, very interesting. But when we go back to Rembrandt's roundel, you'll see that there's something else that occurs to him. And at the top of the roundel is not I for INRI. I is to the right. At the very top is R. And INRI is rotated in such a way that it actually spells out RIIN. Now I have to warn you that I in contemporary Dutch in 17th century, I and J in capital letters was spelled the same. So this is RIJN, which is the last name of, drumroll, Jeffrey? Rembrandt. This is Rembrandt's last name, Rembrandt van Rijn. So he saw in this amulet, which is already, he's borrowing this. He's not inventing this amulet, but he's interpreting the entire image and how it should be read, right? He's orchestrating our reading of it. He sees himself as the artist, as the creator of those 4 elements, right? He's identifying, right? And this was really interesting. It's not aggrandizing. It's more to think about artist as the creator, artist as a magician, artist as an alchemist, and say, I understand. I am within this circle as well, right? And for all of the artists watching, I think this is such a wonderful tradition.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
There's a question. I'm not sure whether you have the answer or not, but I thought it was a fascinating question. it's the idea of, when did this idea of looking at a mirror begin, or when do we start seeing it in art?
So it's a very interesting question and has very deep traditions. It's one of the oldest magical practices. So you'll see it all the way back as far as the documents allow us to look back. It's described in the documents. But at this time in 17th century, there was a very popular alchemical text, and it specifically emphasized the use of mirror and art. And there were 3 or 4 different methods. One of them was a cylindrical mirror. So you would draw an image in perspective and it would make no sense. But when you would put a cylindrical mirror in the center of that image and look through the reflection, it would create a perfect perspective and you'd be able to read the image perfectly. An example of this practice you'll find in Holbein, and he will be one of our stars
wonderful. Yeah.
in 2022. The Anamorphosis, right? The skull that is in the Ambassador painting, right? Stretched, and it makes no sense. It looks like a UFO hanging, but when you walk away from that painting, you turn diagonally, it forms an image of a skull. So this idea of using mirrors was very prevalent in Renaissance, beginning Renaissance, and in the height of the Baroque. And there were literally texts that would instruct you how to use mirrors to code your art and decode it as a viewer.
That Holbein painting, doesn't it actually too have little viewers in the frame that encourage you to like look through them to see the hidden image?
Yeah, stay tuned. If you're patient enough, again, it's going to be the miracle of Holbein is going to be one of our subjects next year.
Fascinating. Wonderful.
Here, what I wanted to show you, again, I mentioned this quickly, that Rembrandt is not inventing this magical talisman, but this talisman is borrowed from both Christian and Jewish ideas, and it really existed. This is a text from 1672, just within a couple of decades of Rembrandt's print, and we see an actual stamp from the collection of a collector who was interested in the stamps, Breckenhofer. And what I wanted to point out, if you look at the top, on the right and on the left, these are mirror images, right? Because the stamp, the nature of the stamp, when you print it, what you see on the print is a mirror image. And that is very important to me for you to understand. And here we see that this is an exact talisman that Rembrandt is using in his print, but that Rembrandt's artwork is functioning like a stamp. What do I mean by that? There is a reason why he didn't paint this image. There is a reason why he didn't draw it, right? He used the engraving plate, because by nature of engraving, you engrave an image, but when you pull the paper print of it, it's a reverse. And in this way, the plate and the printed image act like a mirror of each other. So magically, like a stamp, you're activating the talisman in both positions. So to me, I think there's a profound understanding why Rembrandt decided to use the material of engraving and printmaking rather than painting and drawing for this subject.
I love that. I love that feature, that the idea of the process itself, speaking to the content of the painting.
And in this way, I can even take it further and suggest to our viewers that perhaps Rembrandt is not looking at this as an artwork, but as a talismanic magical practice. Making this print is protecting himself, creating a talisman for him and his family, perhaps. So there is a real act of understanding of how these words and magical incantation work here. This is another book of amulets, and it shows 8 different amulets inspired by the Hebrew mysticism. And number 8 is again the exact talisman of Rembrandt. Again, I wanted to show you how knowledgeable he was and how deeply he understood the functioning of this piece. And again, here, the difference is that he took the exact talisman but rotated the R to be at the top, right? I remind you of his biographical insertion here. R for Rembrandt, R for Rhine, right? And indeed, I wanted to go to his signature. And since we're talking about Rembrandt today and how words function in his art, he almost signed almost every work of art he made. Signature was very important to him. And I mentioned this early on in our first tour, I think already now a year ago. So I'll come back to this briefly. So this will be for a reminder for who watched me before, but very interesting for our new viewers and a great reminder that Rembrandt's name itself carries deep meaning. First of all, when he was born, he was named Rembrandt without the D. So when we look at this name, the D in his name is self-imposed. When you look at legal documents, he always signs his name without that D, simply R-E-M-B-R-A-N-T. If you try to pronounce the two, the D is silent. You won't hear the difference, but it makes a huge philosophical difference. He also writes his name, as he adds the D, separated. It's no longer one word, it's two words. Can you see the space between? Rembrandt. And this I have to share. This is my discovery. A few years ago, I wrote an article about this. It occurred to me that I better look up the meaning of these two words. And in Old Dutch, when we look at the two words, rem means dim or dark, and brand with a D means bright, fire, light. And how do we know Rembrandt best? Is by his amazing mastery of chiaroscuro, the separation of light and dark. The technique that it is also extremely mystical. If we look at it through the alchemist way, right, separating the light of the moon and the sun. If you go to the Genesis, to the beginning of the Bible, the first, in the beginning, God separated the night and day. It is the deepest mystery, which is contained now within the signature of Rembrandt. Every time he writes his name, he reminds us of the mystery of duality between light and dark.
That's wonderful, Zhenya. And after hearing what we did today about his interests and how he put these messages and his attention to the detail, it makes this seem even more clear and intentional, right?
Yes. And do we have any comments or questions before we have the grand finale?
Let's see. Go back. There are so many things happening here. Lots of comments happening. Lots of amazement. People, of course, are really enjoying. Somebody else said the same thing, Laura. I love the idea. Etching is an amazing practice. So that process of it is really resonating with people, and folks loving the images that you're sharing as well.
Great. If you have any questions, we're going to be here a few more minutes, so please send them to us or comments. We'd love to hear from you and address your thoughts. So I wanted to come to the conclusion with looking back at Rembrandt, and there's a great quote that's attributed to him by his early biographers. And I've never shared this before, so I want to share it with you today. A painting is complete when it has the shadows of a god. I read it again. A painting is complete when it has the shadows of a god. So this is very interesting because we have light and enlightenment and radiation as kind of a visions of God. But what Rembrandt is trying to apply to us, that shadow is equally important. Without shadow, we have no light. And if God casts the light, then from light we have the greatest shadow. And if you touch by the shadow of God, you're touched by light. And here we go back to his name, Rembrandt, dim light or dimmed light. And we look at the chiaroscuro in his eyes. One eye is in light, one eye is in the darkness, in his division in his face. And he is touched by God. And I hope that all of you felt the touch of Rembrandt through this Talking Paintings tour.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's some questions coming in now, Zhenya, and I love that finish to it. It is so true, right? There is not one without the other. And we use that as painters often, and we can go back to to Rembrandt for that. And somebody brought up a great question here too. They were wondering if Caravaggio was influenced by Rembrandt, but it was probably the other way around, wasn't it? At least in terms
Correct.
of the use of chiaroscuro, but Rembrandt definitely took it to another level with the hidden symbolism or disguised meanings. Caravaggio's meanings were much more on the surface of the painting, so to speak.
So this is a tour that I once would like to do, and I'm reminded by this question. I'm actually comparing the black and the dark Caravaggio versus Rembrandt, and I'll take an opportunity to give you a quick preview with this answer. Of course, it is Caravaggio who influenced Rembrandt. Rembrandt never traveled to Italy. If you were an educated painter at the time, the dream was to travel to Italy on a grand tour and be inspired by Caravaggio and other masters. He didn't have that opportunity, but his teacher did. Peter Lastman traveled to Italy, was so inspired by Caravaggio that he started almost a whole Caravaggisti school in Amsterdam. And so they always say that Rembrandt did not travel to Italy, Rome traveled to Rembrandt. And so he was from early on extremely inspired by the chiaroscuro, chiaro being light, scuro being dark, from the early on from his teacher. But the main difference for me between Caravaggio, who I adore, and we're going to have a special tour next year as well on Caravaggio and his mysteries, and Rembrandt, Caravaggio's black is the true black. And it is flat, and it is like a black hole. It swallows you. It's infinite. There's nothing in it. It's extremely theatrical. It's like being on stage, and it's backlit so that everything in the front pushes forward, everything in the back disappears. Rembrandt's dark or black is full of mystery. When we look in his dark passages, we start seeing faces and hints and words and images and overpainted areas that are coming back through and insisting. So it is not their lights that are different, it is their darks that are philosophically opposite.
Fascinating. Wonderful. I look forward to that. Caravaggio's, definitely one of my favorite painters as well. Lots of kudos. We have Margaret says it's very enlightening talk. Thank you, Margaret,
and what I was hoping that when you go back to your books on your shelf, when you go back to internet browsing today through Google Images, you can bring up these images so magnified and study them. And of course, my favorite, when you go back inside the actual museums, that you will notice more messages that scholars haven't talked about yet. And your revelation, your enlightenment is just, if not more important. And when you see it, write to us right away so we can become rich and wealthy with Jeff, right? So do share it with us.
It is wonderful. And that's great advice. And I hope as we all are returning there that we do spend a little more time as we engage with these wonderful works of art to seek out these types of meanings, whether they're your own interpretations, like you said, or trying to understand what you think the interpretation of the artist. But it just is so much richer. And that's something I've really enjoyed, Zhenya, from these shows and sharing this time with you, is slowing down and helping me to slow down and look deeper into the work and garner more meaning. So thank you, as always, for this inspirational and inspiring time.
Pleasure. Well, there's a lot more. I tried to stay in an hour today because I know our 1 hour tours spread to almost 2 hours in the past, but the information was so dense that I didn't want to make it too complicated. I wanted to actually make it friendly and feel like it had developed inside you and made sense to you. So I tried to make it a little sweet and short today, but I'm happy if there's any other comments. Otherwise, we're really coming to the end.
Absolutely. And well, it'll be a catalyst, I'm sure. I like that, to tease us a little bit with what I'm sure is a very rich and deep study. And definitely continue to make comments. Zhenya is fantastic about going back and reading through them and responding. So even if you didn't catch the beginning and go back and then something comes to mind, continue to comment and we'll continue to engage. And thank you again, Zhenya, and thank you everybody for joining us. Did you have one more thing you wanted to announce?
I was just going to say, I will post that publication about mirrors that's contemporary to Rembrandt. So look out for that. I will post the reference. The interesting part, some of these original books you could still buy on eBay. You can buy them in reprint for $15, or you can buy them for a few $1,000s, the original text. Text and books are still not as expensive and artworks today. So it's amazing to have something like that in your collection.
Perfect, perfect. And I guess one more announcement too would be, in the interim, since we're only doing them live every other month, we were just talking today how we're going to be posting links to previous episodes. Now, you can always go and look them up on our Facebook page at Royal Talens NA, but we're going to go ahead and post some links to some YouTube channels that Zhenya has created, so you can go back and maybe stimulated to go back and look at some of the previous episodes, because there really is a link between them. Things that we talked about today, like Zhenya pointed out, are related to previous talks. So we'll encourage you to do that, and we'll be posting those as well.
And a special thank you to Jeff for always surprising us with his hats.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Got to have fun. You got to have fun, right? Get into character.
Can't wait to see you next time. We're going to see you in January with, as I said, I always like to make it different. So the next tour will be dedicated to a woman artist, one of the greatest draftswomen ever in history of art, Katie Kolovitz, and her political sentiment of what an artist should do to make a change in the world. So it will be far from mysterious, but very moving and very still politically resonant.
Very powerful images. You cannot look at her work and not come back emotionally affected by them. They're really, really wonderful and powerful images. That'll be exciting. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see everybody next time on the Invisible Museum Tour, and keep an eye out for those links to previous episodes. We'll talk to everybody soon. Take care and have a happy Halloween.